The Pittsburgh Steelers have been named the favorite, not even just a landing spot, the favorite, the odds-on favorite for a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, and a name that, I'm not going to lie, shocked the hell out of me when I saw it come up and I read the reports. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, an extra Steelers to Go here for you today as we approach the NFL trade deadline, and plenty of news begins rolling in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/allsteelerstalk. Find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Check us out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the full podcast, obviously on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Odds-on favorites. Odds-on. They are top dogs to go out and get an extremely surprising name in the AFC, but one that, you can't shoot this guy down. You can't say he's not worth anything. You can't say, why wouldn't you consider him? What he's done in the NFL so far, what he continues to do in the NFL, makes any team better that he's on. Unfortunately, he's just been on some pretty bad teams. That name is DeAndre Hopkins. The Pittsburgh Steelers, according to betonline.ag, have 5-1 odds, lead the pack to go get the Tennessee Titans wide receiver as he enters the trade block along with most of the rest of their team. And the Pittsburgh Steelers got some bad news there because Derrick Henry is expected to land with the Baltimore Ravens, and some have tossed out the Cleveland Browns, but it appears the Ravens are top dogs in this race. The Steelers, they're probably not going to go get a running back. Doesn't make much sense for them to get a running back. Didn't think it made a ton of sense to go get a wide receiver, but here they are leading the way for DeAndre Hopkins. They're followed by the Cleveland Browns, 11-2 odds, Seattle Seahawks, 6-1, and the Los Angeles Chargers at 7-1. You look at DeAndre Hopkins, 31 years old, 2-year, $26 million deal. He's got an out next year. It's a little under $8 million. If you decide to move on from the 31-year-old, be 32 at that time. I'm running through stats here. I'm trying to come up with something because for everybody listening, I know you're a little confused. I know I was a little confused. When I saw the headline, when I saw the news, when I got the email, I looked at it and went, the Pittsburgh Steelers? The Pittsburgh Steelers with DeAndre Hopkins? What are we doing? Why does that even make sense? But what I've learned is that Vegas and the sports books, they always know something. Always know something. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to look at this and say, yeah, maybe we are odds-on favorites for DeAndre Hopkins, maybe there's a reason for that we don't know, but the Pittsburgh Steelers know. Let's talk about it. Does it make sense? We have DeAndre Hopkins. You have Deontay Johnson. You have George Pickens now. That's a trio that, in my head, is as dangerous as they come. How it works out becomes very confusing because Deontay Johnson is not a slot guy, no matter how many times people want to try to make him a slot guy. He's not a slot receiver. He does his best work on the boundary. He does his best work on out routes or comebacks along the sideline instead of in the middle of the field where he has to make contested catches and take on contact. That's just not his game. He does it from time to time, and he does make plays in there, but he also drops a lot of passes on the inside on those slots. A lot of those times where people want to bring up Deontay Johnson cannot catch. Those passes are quick slants on the inside or moves out of the slot a lot of the time. So you're not going to move him inside. George Pickens, you're certainly not going to move inside because that guy is as dangerous as it comes on the outside. He has more body control than maybe anybody in the NFL. And at this point, he's your superstar. He is the guy that you are going to develop into Jamar Chase or DK Metcalf or T. Higgins or whoever else you want to bring. DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to develop into that guy. That's who the Pittsburgh Steelers want him to develop as. Allen Robinson is your slot. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins moves into the slot, but I still find that a little weird. DeAndre Hopkins is a guy where there are a few players in the NFL where you could throw a football up to them, they could catch it on the sidelines, you can't see the replay, and you know for certain they got their feet in bounds. That's DeAndre Hopkins. He always toe taps, always stays in bounds, always knows where he is. He's got the biggest hands in the NFL. The guy is a stud. He's a future Hall of Famer for a reason. He brings anything you want him to bring to a football team, and I believe that he's got plenty of juice left in the tank if you go out and ask for him. You give him an opportunity to compete in the playoffs and to fight for a shot at a Super Bowl, and that's probably what he'd get in Pittsburgh, at least an opportunity to fight in the postseason. I mean, chances are he's going to take that to another level, and he's going to be even more dangerous. But again, I just don't know how you mix it in. Do you work 3 wide receivers on the outside in Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and DeAndre Hopkins, and then keep Calvin Austin and Allen Robinson on the inside and feel comfortable about that? Because, I mean, that sounds great, but how many touches, how many passes can go around? You still have a developing quarterback. And that's actually a good point right there. Kenny Pickett, where does he come into this? Because right now he is developing a very, very nice and natural flow with Deontay and with George. And yeah, DeAndre Hopkins only adds to that. He only makes everything easier for Kenny Pickett and more dangerous for this offense. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But at the same time, you are messing up a flow with 2 guys that you believe are the future of the position, superstars at the position, at least in Pittsburgh, and guys that you want Kenny to have the tightest connection you could possibly get at wide receiver between a quarterback and a wide receiver. You're going to mess that up a little bit. You're going to look at it and go, man, I don't know about that one. I have a hard time with this one. I really, really do. Just because I think DeAndre Hopkins is a great wide receiver. I do think he's a future Hall of Famer. I think the dude's still a stud. I think he makes any team so much better that he's on. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers would be so much better with DeAndre Hopkins. How he fits into the mold, that's where I get confused. How the Steelers work him in and say, this guy will be fine, we got a spot for him, that's where I get confused. I just don't know if they do. Maybe they do. They're odds-on favorites for one reason or another. As for trade compensation, I'm not giving up anything more than a 4th, maybe a 5th-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm just taking on the contract this season and saying, hey, sounds good to me. You know, we'll move on from him next year if we need to, or we'll lower a salary cap hit if we need to. But this is not a trade for you to go get a draft pick. This is a trade for you to unload some players and create some space so that at the end of the year, you could go into the season and go into the draft and just kind of rebuild and regroup. That's who the Tennessee Titans are. That's where they stand currently. I'm not giving up much. I'm having a hard time saying I'm giving up anything, just because I got a lot of faith in Deontay and I got a lot of faith in George, and I got a lot of faith in Calvin Austin eventually clicking and hitting a stride here and being very useful. And I just don't know how you add another superstar into this mix and make it flow comfortably and not kind of screw things up, and also not halt the development and the chemistry between Kenny Pickett and his younger wide receivers.